Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa Evangelista, and I'm an MFA intern. I will be your co-host for tonight's Wil Talk with Artists. Our digital discussion is with interdisciplinary artist Ariel Zhang. Ariel is an interdisciplinary artist who explores the boundaries between interior and exterior spaces, logic and chaos, the visible and the invisible. Her work often references abstract geometric forms and architectural spaces. Ariel's artwork calls on the viewer to re-examine their perception of the spaces around them and to consider their memories and experiences in those places. Additionally, I would like to introduce the host of our show, Wil Scott. Wil is an art historian with an extensive career as a photographer and the former head of adult programs in the National Gallery of Art. He is uniquely qualified to bridge the gap between artists and the public.
Thank you, Marissa, and especially thank you, Ariel, for agreeing to chat with us this evening. I think your work has impressed me and really caught my attention as being sort of a new element, a more contemporary element in our shows. And you have a very interesting background, and you've shared some interesting ideas about art and your work in our conversations. So I look forward to our conversation this evening. I think the first thing, though, that I'd like to do is, as I found was very helpful in our last interview, Marissa, if you would just put up the first image from
Sure.
the PowerPoint while we talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason I wanted to start here, Ariel, is because the nature of your work is demands a little more effort to sort of take in and think about and understand. And so would you mind, before we do anything else, just briefly explain what it is that we're seeing on the screen? Is that really a series of separate paintings or some other kind of two-dimensional work, or just explain what it is so we can start from a little more general shared knowledge.
Yeah, sure. Well, this piece is titled Untitled, and it is oil on Yupo paper and poplar. Actually, the thinner piece is poplar wood. It's not totally two-dimensional. It's actually three-dimensional. The wood is about 1 inch thick, and also I painted the edges. Yeah, but the other piece is totally flat. And I actually didn't intend to make them into a series like the arrangement like now appeared on the image before I started to paint them. I took hundreds, maybe thousands of photos of the space I live in, the exterior space, and also my surroundings. So these are some familiar corners. You can tell some are stairs, some are doorways, and some are train stations. And then I pick several of them and paint them. I actually make them into a fragmented puzzles. They are particularly loaded areas or corners or transitions from one space to the other. And I feel that through the painting, through the process, the painting rebuilds them, they destroy them, and then recontextualized. So what I did is just filter them and to form them with a new visual display. So I feel that this painting is full of silence, of the silence which has been thickened and extended. It's more like snapshots in my life, the things surrounding me. And I was trying to amplify the invisible. These are all empty because I feel that the stillness sometimes is more powerful than the visibilities. Yeah, that's a kind of process.
Yes. That was very informing. So I thank you for that. And now let me ask you a couple of real sort of simple, basic questions, and then I want to explore more conceptually what it is that you're doing.
Okay.
So the first is, when you exhibit this piece, can you rearrange it? Do you rearrange it if you present it in a different gallery space or public space? Or
yes, I think I will rearrange it if it would be displayed in different kinds of space. It depends on the space itself, I think, because there are single pieces, but you see that they have some connections. I actually didn't realize them before I finished all of them, and then I arranged them a lot of times, and it really works. So I think I would rearrange them depending on the space.
well, I think that's a tremendously a fundamentally important aspect of your work as I have engaged it, because the next question is, I hope, easy to answer on one level, and then maybe you'll want to expand on it. Are you, in doing this kind of work, are you expanding on the space in which it's presented or installed? Or are you creating what is really an interior imagined space?
I think it's more about imagined space because to my perception, painting is all about illusions. It is artificial space. We never created space, but we create images. And these space, they are not actual colors. They're not realistic paintings. They're frozen paintings. Yes, I think. And also, I would love to see that the gravity is in those paintings. So I think I'm not trying to extend the space or narrow down the space. I was just trying to picture what I see and what I love.
I was struck by your selection of the word frozen. In one sense, of course, every painting freezes an illusion or an abstraction, but it freezes it because it's static. But the way you've described it, the way I'm beginning to understand your work is it's not really frozen. If you can rearrange these pieces, if you can think of it as an interior imagined space, then is it really possible to freeze it, or are you really doing something much more expansive and complex?
I feel that when a painting was finished, then it's already being frozen inside the frame. Maybe the little frame, the larger frame is not, but the little frame, it is being frozen. Because all the space, what I see space is like, the space is a solid structure, but what migrates and moves inside the space, like the emotions, like the turbulence, is very like they're moving. They're not still, they're not solid. So I was frozen these things inside my paintings.
I see. Now, I want to do something that we haven't done often before, and that is talk about some of your influences, where you've gotten some of the formal and conceptual ideas that are behind your work. So, Marissa, yes.
Sure.
This is a beautiful painting. And I can see, I think, a direct connection. Can you tell us a little bit about who the artist is and how you encountered her work? And is this someone who's a direct influence on what you're doing right now?
Yeah, sure. Well, the artist's name is Deb Sokolow. She's a Chicago-based artist, and she's also a writer, an SIC alumni, the school I go to. And her work usually intersects with the physicality of lines, shapes, colors, and surface. She's a very text-driven and research-based artist. I once visited her studios, and her studios is full of colorful collages, different kinds of drawings, thousands of them, and it's really impressive. I was really impressed by the inner logic of this drawing because it seems simple, but it has a lot of has a lot of logical thinkings inside of it. And we talked a little bit about the process of her, how she make her art. And she told me that she would go to these places to do historical researches. She would ask people about how they feel about the space. And some of her works are fictional and some are non-fictional. I'm more interested in those non-fictional works. And I think her process influenced me a lot because I usually wrote a lot and I did a lot of research, and then they became a very simple visualization. So that's a very important artist that influenced me.
Yes, I can see the connection. Just one quick question about that connection. Her work is very colorful, and that's clearly a part of the structure of what she's doing, at least, and perhaps much more in her mind. Why have you chosen more or less a grisaille palette or a less colorful palette?
You can tell that I use a lot of Payne's gray, which is actually a blue in my paintings. And this color is very important to me. I think I haven't explored it enough, so I'm still doing that. And blue usually stands for distance, isolation, the sense of like freezing, and you
Mhm.
feel that the blue traverses the terrain, it disperses in water and scatters in the sky. So and there is a very huge tension between the infinity of blue and all those geometric shapes in my paintings, because I use a lot of squares and rectangulars. So this kind of color balanced such tension in my works. I'm still working on it.
Yeah. The next question I want to ask you, I feel like I have to offer some form of apology because it is going to bring up a lot of names of dead white men.
Mm.
I mean, it's the patriarchy that I'm going to ask you about, but since you're in Chicago and because of the nature of your own work,
Mhm.
are you familiar with the Bauhaus movement?
Oh, actually, I'm not very familiar with that.
Well, that's actually a good thing.
No, I know,
in
but
this
I just
case.
know a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because when I look at this with my background, I wrote about a 20th century artist, Frank Stella, for my
Mhm.
master's thesis, and I wrote about the leading early 20th century modernist artists and their influence in America for my dissertation. So I can't help but look at something like this and not
Mhm.
just think of the Bauhaus, but think of people like Pete Mondrian,
Mm.
okay, and Vasily Kandinsky, and architecturally, Frank Lloyd Wright, you are playing with some of the same kind of formal issues
Mhm. Yes.
in your studies, either at Chicago or your earlier studies, earlier experiences in education. Were you introduced to those artists?
Yes, I know a lot about Frank Lloyd Wright because I actually took a class called Chicago Architecture, and we visited a lot of historical places, landmarks in Chicago.
Yeah.
I'm fond of those architectures. It's really impressive and it's very old. Some of them doesn't even exist now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you enjoyed Wright's work that you've seen around Chicago, I'd like to suggest that you go to Taliesin East
Mhm.
in Wisconsin. When you see how his architecture really does exist in the landscape, I think you might find some interesting ideas that generate from that. The other thing I'd like to do now, though, is to look at the next slide, Marissa, the very next one. This is just, when I looked this, I'd never heard of this a woman's work before. I looked it up after you introduced me to it, and it's fascinating. And
Yes.
would you tell us a little bit about why you're drawn to this artist's work?
Yes, sure. The artist's name is Vanika Bava, and she is an Indian female artist, also SSC alumni. And her practice emphasizes the intersection of drawings, sculptures, installations, the still and the motion, the functional and also the non-functional intermingle. She incorporates a lot of geographic, and architectural elements in her works. I was very impressed by this piece because it's a pink scaffolding, and scaffolding as an industrial element that actually appears a lot also in my own works. It's about the status of being under construction. All my works is about how to forge my own existence, how to forge human existence in a world, in a reality world. And her work just perfectly display the status of under construction. So, and it's a pink scaffolding, so it's kind of playful and isolated in a huge land. There's no people there, but people can also interact with it. I also want to make a lot of site-specific work if I have the opportunities. I love large-scale sculptures. I also make sculptures, actually.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, I think, when we look at more of your own work. But I want to ask you a very sort of loaded question. And if you're not comfortable answering it, then please just say so. These two contemporary female artists have, I think, very compelling work that they're creating, both of them, and you're being influenced by them rather than the more patriarchal, older 20th century artists that I've referred to. I just want to understand, are your works created out of your own experience and your familiarity with these contemporary artists, and there's little influence of these older early 20th century artists that I've referred to?
Actually, no. I think I was influenced by those more classical artists more than those contemporary artists. Maybe not influenced, but I love the works a lot as well. And for me, myself, my work is not actually about personal experiences. I'm more talking about the whole human experiences. And it's a very broad topic. I was trying to narrow it down to my own perception about everything happening in the world. So it's kind of hard, but I was trying to do that.
Well, that's very interesting and intriguing for me to hear, because I've found in my own study and my own work for whatever I've been able to accomplish there, that the strongest art is based on a wider knowledge. It just gives you more resources. It gives you more things to think about, more ideas to provoke you and for you to respond to or expand on. So that, I think I'm very happy to learn about your work. And having said that, let's look and learn more about your work by talking about some of these individual objects.
Okay. So this piece is titled "The Visibility of the Invisible." I just mentioned that I view that the space we live in as a huge container, the architectures, the buildings, especially those skyscrapers. And there are a lot of things happening inside of space. So this painting is about this, but actually you can interpret it as whatever you want. And you can tell from this piece, actually, I was heavily influenced by the artist Mark Rothko, Hard Richter. Yeah, those brushes. I always believe that with the brush, you have the control, but from experience, you know exactly what kind of mark you're gonna make, but with the squeeze, you lose control. That is the moment where a painting truly happened. They create their inner logic, inner structures by the squeeges. So I really don't have a lot of story about this painting. Do you have
any? Well, when I saw it, I was not actually, when I first was looking at this and thinking about it, the art historical part, like your reference to Rothko, was not what came to mind. It was the spatial aspect. It was the geometric elements that you've combined. And when I looked up your Facebook page and saw where you've come from, a very prosperous, modernizing city or cities in China, and then you're in Chicago. In October, I drove back from Milwaukee and, of course, had to negotiate through the Chicago rush hour. And it was a gray day, foggy day. As soon as I learned that you're in Chicago and I looked at this image, I thought, that's what Chicago looked like from 20 miles away. So I don't know, does that offend you that I said that, or is that just something that's acceptable to you? That's my personal reaction.
Yeah, that's very nice.
Oh, well, thank you. I thought Chicago.
I love different kinds of interpretations.
Yeah, I do too in my work. So, okay, let's look at the next piece, please.
Oh, this one. This one is titled "Read as a Whole." It's actually a site-specific work I made for the school library, Flaxman Library. I have 12 pieces in total, and I'm still working on this piece. It's a book made of concrete, you can tell, and they cannot be opened. They're not readable. So it is focusing more on the book's functionality and symbolism. I feel that the density oh, sorry, the cat in my room is yeah, density, the strength, the durability, quality of the concrete can perfectly phrase the seriousness of the book and also the value of the paper book. Though it's a digital world, I'm still very fond of the paper book. And they're packed with possibilities and openness because you never know what the text is. And the process is the most important part because it analogs the absorption of knowledge from conventional books. We assimilate them and then interpret them given different contexts and different people's experience. And then it turned to our solid experiences. Yeah, it's changing from a fluid space to a solid phase, just like how the concrete goes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Physically, did you create a mold and then cast the concrete yourself, or did someone else do that for you?
I did that. I did that myself.
Yeah. So when we look at your works that are three-dimensional or multi-dimensional, you physically fabricated them yourself.
Yes, all of
Do you
them.
think that's important that you do that?
Yes, of course, that's important. The process is even more important than the outcomes to me sometimes. Yeah. It
Right.
is the best time for me to ponder on the meanings of how do I mean by forging my space.
And would you accept the idea that, or did you think of this as you were creating this object, that by casting a book in concrete, you are referencing the enduring aspect of serious thoughts or even, frivolous thoughts embodied in a book? They live on once the reader has read them. They have a durable existence like the durability of concrete.
Yes, because I feel that the book is full of, the book is packed with time and space and also histories. It's the most valuable stuff in our life. And it passed on through different people's minds because we read it and then we take in, and then we put them somewhere else. That's the most important value of the book.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by the way you're thinking on multiple levels as you create and display your work. So let's look at another. Now, this, did you take a photograph? Did you arrange the books? I mean, what's your creative input in this particular image?
I arranged the book in the library. I just put them to some corners among all the other books because our school library is full of art books. Books about art, so I put them like in different sections, like evenly, so the students can touch them, they can encounter them accidentally, and they can hold them in their hands and take a look at the book.
So this was something this is part of the commission, if you will, or the project that the library has allowed you to do.
Yes, I talked with the library manager and they're very glad to have my works inside the library.
Yeah. I think you should see if you can get them distributed around to other, at least college and university libraries.
Yes.
Be a whole other way of expanding this project.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next image, please, Marissa. This is one I can't read. I can't seem to get my mind around what I'm seeing. So please take your time and explain what we're looking at.
Yeah, this is also about the things I talked about. The space is called condensed space. It's more about an exploration about the medium of screen print, because I view screen print as a medium that embodied the flattened space by the process of overlapping, and it's a multi-layer system. So can you turn to the next slide, Marissa? Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's an interactive piece. The outside is a cardboard box, which highlights the artificial quality of the space we live in, which is the building. And I choose a floor plan to embody the flattened space because it's the most condensed form. When we make the screen print, we just condense all the layers together to one image. And then I was trying to blur the boundary between the three-dimensional space and two-dimensional space, because when it's closed, it's just like a book form. And when you open it, you suddenly encountered those three-dimensional space by entering the floor plans. And I printed them on the film because, yes, I said that before, but it's the turbulence, the emotional waves inside of space. It's invisible. All visible stuff are the solid walls and floors and structures. So I used the black lines. Yeah.
Can we go back, Marissa? Okay, Ariel, you say that you have fish line. Is that what I see that looks like spider webs in the
Yes.
corners?
Yes.
Okay, and so that has a structural purpose. It holds it together when it's open.
Yes.
And when you display this, are viewers, visitors allowed to touch it and open and close it?
Yes, they're all allowed to touch it.
Have you ever considered the fact that in one sense you might be adding a fourth dimension?
A fourth dimension?
Well, because it's obviously it's physically a three-dimensional object, but the way you described its creation, the way you described what you're trying to accomplish, and now that I'm confident that yes, visitors can manipulate it, they can open and close it, you're really entering into their imagination, into their interior mental world. See what I mean? Sort of a fourth dimension. I think that at least that's intriguing to me. I want to go and see one of your actual constructions and do that. Anyway, I think you're raising a lot of very intriguing questions in your work. See, don't we have another one or two?
Yes, I believe we have another one, and we also have a video that's about 4 minutes.
Yes, and we do want to see the video. So I love this. I love blue, and
Yeah,
you know, so just on that purely superficial level, I think this is a beautiful work.
Thank you. This piece is titled "A Portrait of the Horse." It's the exploration about the color blue and the shape square. Actually, when I first started thinking about this piece, I imagined myself watching a horse chasing a carrot that is tied in front of him, hanging on his back. He runs very fast, but he cannot reach the carrot. It's very hopeless and even a little bit pathetic. And I picture myself as a viewer in front of the horse. I know that exactly I am the horse, but I'm being an outsider now. So it's about self-awareness. It's about philosophy. I feel that it's about human desire. The blue stands for infinity, eternity, the things we want, the sky, the water, and the square serves as the limitations, the frames, the structure we live in. No matter how free we think we are, there are social systems, there are a lot of physical structures that consolidate our space, that frames ourselves in. So there is a strong tension between the infinity of the blue and also the frame, the limitations. So I created them. It's about endless possibilities, the push and pull around the boundaries. Yeah.
Two things come to my mind hearing you say that. One is that your work is the end product of some very serious thought. And you are very effective at articulating that thought process, that creative process. When you present your work to an audience, do you feel that it stands entirely on its own, or would you want it to be supported by some text that would help the viewer engage with your work?
I would rather just display it like this way, no any other text. I welcome different kinds of interpretations because all my work is abstract. And abstraction, the most important aspect of abstraction is to welcome interpretations, different perceptions. I want to arouse different kinds of emotions and feelings other than my own personal experiences.
Yeah, and of course that was a hallmark of Rothko's whole approach to his abstraction. So another nod to the patriarchy. You also mentioned early on that you would like to work on a large scale.
Yes.
Taking this image, this work, you didn't give the exact dimensions. Can you roughly tell us how much of the wall this covers, roughly?
It's about 6 feet by 6 feet.
6 feet by 6 feet.
Yes, I think so.
If you had unlimited resources, how large would you want it to be?
I want it to be covering the whole room, a large
Okay.
space, all
Yeah.
of the squares.
Yeah, I would definitely think that would be fascinating to see.
Yeah.
So I hope you can accomplish that someday. Now, is the video the next thing, Marissa?
I believe so, but I also think that we have another image of this piece at another
Oh,
angle.
okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes.
Thank you for reminding us.
Of course, of
Putting that on the
course.
screen. Yeah, there's just a whole lot going on, and I mean that in a good way. A lot to look at, a lot to think about. Do you want to say any more about this view, Erin?
Yeah, it has a lot of industrial elements. You can see the screws, and there
Mhm.
is a concrete piece. There's plaster and wires. I incorporated a lot of architectural elements in this piece.
Do you look for those kinds of architectural elements, or is it something that you just decide to include in the creative flow, the process?
I planned it before actually for this piece because I know what I'm going for. I know what kind of material I look for because the characteristics of the material is very important to my work. I never use anything meaningless to my work.
Good, yeah. Okay, our timing is, of course, not endless. So let's go ahead and look at the video, and then we can talk more about it after we've all seen it.
Okay.
While Marissa's working on that, Ariel, let's ask something that's a little more basic. You are studying in Chicago, living in Chicago. You looked at New York. You're from China. Would you just say a little bit about your background and education in China before you came to the
Oh
States?
yeah. I went to Shanghai International Studies University to learn German and economics, a double major. And then I decided to came to United States and apply for art schools. Yeah.
That's a very abrupt and significant transition. What provoked you to do that, to make such a change?
When I was studying in China, it's actually a full schedule study plan from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. No social life. Every day is like library life, and you only hang out with our classmates. And I feel that I can see my whole past. I can see the end of my career. I can see the end of my life. I'll be working with some international companies, have a promising future, earn a lot of money, have a happy family. But actually, that's not what I'm doing and what I'm going for. I'm more interested in literature, psychology, philosophy, and art stuff. So I don't want a pre-planned life that I can see the end. So I came here. I have to go to a lot of places. I have to see the world.
Well, I applaud you for following your own desires and plans and hopes rather than, you know, getting into that.
Yes.
I think that's deadly too.
It's a
My
good
mother
one,
wanted
but
me to
it's
be
a narrow one.
my mother wanted me to be a lawyer, and my father-in-law thought I would never be able to earn a decent living. So, you know, live your dream.
Yes.
Plot your own path. So Marissa, is that ready?
I think I have another version of the video up, so I'm going to try it.
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. I see your comments.
You're very welcome. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
I can see the connections with just these images of your video with your work. It's awesome. I'll shush up now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Can you guys hear it? Ariel, you hear?
I don't hear anything,
All right.
but the image is fascinating.
Ariel, what I'm gonna do is send everyone a link in the chat, and I invite you all to check out the video through those means.
Or we can just play the image as fine, I think.
Would you be okay with that, Ariel?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I think it has sound now. I heard a little bit.
Oh,
I heard a
maybe
little
you're-
something.
Yes.
Now, Ariel, since we're not hearing the sound well or at all, Did you add the color?
No, I didn't add a color, but I did some effects in Adobe After Effects. Yeah.
Did you do the photography?
Yes, I didn't edit the colors actually, just some effects.
Can you hear the color now?
Oh, I
Or
hear
it's
sound.
Okay.
Now I hear sound.
Yay.
Ariel, that was stunning.
Thank you.
I think it was transfixing and transformative. And Elaine had an excellent question about the music, but first I want to just say back to the canon. George O'Keeffe in the 1930s painted some wonderful images of New York City, and you've taken that approach to a whole new level. And now if you would respond to Elaine's questions about the music. Did you see that?
Yeah, sure. She asked about the music, the background music. Actually, most of them are online free sources. you can get them. I just targeting whatever I want. For example, the doorbells, the city sound, and also some pianos. I just search for them. I search a lot of them and then edit them.
Well, it all meshed very well.
I was
Seamless.
just thinking that it was beautifully orchestrated to go with the changing images. Beautifully done.
Thank you.
That's a very impressive command of
Mhm.
mixing different media with great effectiveness. Okay, looking at our time, and we've run through all the images, correct, Marissa?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, so let's go ahead. I see there are a number of questions in addition to Elaine's. So let's address those. Marissa, if you want to handle that.
There aren't any questions that I
They
can
were all-
see as Elaine's.
There were 8 comments in the chat. I don't know if they were
Oh,
questions or
Some
just.
of those were from comments from Elaine.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
It's okay. We appreciate you being involved in the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ariel, something I want to mention is that I actually really connect with your work in terms of considering my memories through
Mhm.
those pieces, and those really come through to me. For example, going back to that, I'll just pull it up real quick and
Yeah.
share my screen again. But it was Will's comment to creating something like a 4th dimension in
Mhm.
your work. This piece, something I think about when I was a kid in middle school was my teachers explaining how do we, as people living in a 3-dimensional world, think about living in a 2-dimensional space or a 1-dimensional space. And then it's like a 1-dimensional space is very flat, like what you have in the first picture. And the 2nd-dimensional space is like being on the X and Y axis. And then, but in this piece, it kind of is to me like seeing a 4th-dimensional space, like what Will mentioned, because 4th dimensions like having all these spaces combined and being able to go through them. So as a viewer, I feel like you've really invited us to view our reality and our fictional understanding of our reality in this beautiful visual way to kind of understand the world more and our connection with it. And I think you just do that so well, and I'm so impressed. And I do think that your abstract work is so inviting for the viewer.
Marissa, that's very well said. And Ariel, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
It's all
this
right.
particular view that's on the screen now, listening to Marissa comment and say what she just shared, this reminds me of when I was an undergraduate and first learning about the Renaissance invention of 1-point perspective.
Oh.
And I will go back to what I said earlier with more confidence. It is as though you're opening up a 4th dimension. And the way that Marissa was just speaking about that point, I really think there's something there, whether you intend it or not, that is very dynamic and is a path that I hope you might think about exploring further.
Yeah, thank you, Marissa and Will, for your beautiful comments. Actually, my ultimate passion about art making is trying to create something that surpasses time and space, that mingle all the things together. So I'm really glad.
I think you're already accomplishing that. So,
And I'm so excited to hear that you're interested in large scale works. I think your work would translate really well to something much larger.
absolutely. Well, if those are comments rather than questions,
Yes, they are.
we have a few minutes. And if anybody has some questions that they would like to ask now, that would be the time.
Yes. And people are also welcome to unmute and ask questions as well.
Okay, well, I would just say that you've given us so much to think about, and I've enjoyed looking at your work and talking with you so much. To remind all the others that are participating, in about 2 weeks, we'll have it edited. You'll get a notice that it's available on the MFA YouTube site. And Ariel, thank you, and I hope you'll continue to participate in our shows. And I hope you'll share with me and with all of us what you have coming in the future about exhibitions and that sort of thing. I'd really like to know more about your career as it progresses.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for all the comments, feedbacks, and questions. And thank you for inviting me again. I will send my works to you. We will definitely keep in touch.
Great,
Awesome.
great. Marissa, thanks for your help, and thanks for all of you who were listening in tonight.
Thank you all. And we do
Bye.
currently have one of Ariel's pieces in our Small Wonders exhibition.
Yes.
So you can check that out.
Okay, well, happy holidays to everyone.
Have a good
We won't
holiday.
have another session until January, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining in.